He wasn't depressed, he wasn't lazy, he was just fading. Leonid was 63 when he stopped recognizing himself. He still looked like him in the mirror, more or less. Same salt and pepper hair, same strong jaw, same shoulders that had once carried half a house during renovations. But something beneath the skin had dulled. It started quietly. He didn't feel like shaving. He stopped initiating touch. He began sitting longer before rising, not because he couldn't move, but because he didn't want to. His wife noticed first. "You seem far away," she said, "like you're watching your own life from a distance." He nodded, but didn't answer, because deep down he didn't know what was happening either. Until one evening he bent down to tie his shoes and got dizzy. That's when he knew something deeper than age was at play. It wasn't his heart, it was his hormones. Most men over 60 don't think about testosterone. They think about blood pressure, cholesterol, prostate exams, maybe libido, in quiet moments. But testosterone? That's for young men, gym bros, not athletes. Except it's not. Testosterone is energy. Will dot fire in the belly. The get-up-and-go instinct that makes you not just alive, but motivated. And when it drops too low, men don't become sick. They become invisible, even to themselves. That was Leonid. He didn't feel bad enough to be sick. He just didn't feel anything. What nobody told him, at his annual checkup, the doctor didn't even test his hormones. Normal for your age, he was told, even though no labs were taken. It wasn't until a friend, a 68-year-old widower with a new girlfriend and a twinkle in his eye, said, "Get your testosterone checked," that Leonid even considered it. And when the results came back, total testosterone, 281 mg/dl, technically normal. But in truth, too low for vitality, too low for desire, too low to build muscle or recover from stress, too low to feel like a man. What he refused, Leonid didn't want injections, didn't trust pills, didn't want to be on something for life. So he asked the only question that really mattered: can I bring it back naturally? And that's when our real work began, not with testosterone itself, but with the terrain that supports it. The terrain of vitality. Testosterone doesn't live in isolation. It's not just a hormone, it's a reflection of how your body sleeps, moves, eats, thinks, and rests. When you restore that terrain, the hormone follows. So we started not with treatment, but with truth. How he woke, what he ate, when he rested, what he feared, how often he felt desired, and how often he allowed himself to desire. This wasn't just biology, it was identity. And if Leonid was going to rise again, not just hormonally, but emotionally, it had to begin from within. What you'll learn in this journey. Leonid's story is the doorway, but through this series you'll also meet a man who rebuilt testosterone through resistance training, not in a gym, but in his garden. A widower who thought he'd lost all drive until he addressed his sleep. A quiet grandfather whose hormones rebounded after he started eating fat again. And one unforgettable story of a man who restored his energy by allowing himself to feel anger again. Because testosterone isn't just chemistry. It's permission to feel, to act, to live like you mean it. Next, we enter the body. In the next chapter, we dive into the biology, how testosterone is made, what drains it, and what builds it naturally. We'll meet Roman, 67, who thought his weakness was from age, but whose body, once nourished, came roaring back to life. Shall we go there together? He thought it was just age, but his body was starving for signals. Roman was 67 and practical. He built cabinets, tuned pianos, and believed in keeping things simple. He avoided doctors unless absolutely necessary and rarely complained, even when his wrists ached or his back flared. He still walked daily, mowed his own lawn, kept up with chores. But deep down, he knew something had shifted, not his strength. That was still there, mostly, but his recovery, he no longer bounced back. A long day of lifting left him sore for 3. A poor night's sleep meant a sluggish week, and worst of all, he began waking up feeling unstarted, not tired, not depressed, just empty. When I asked about his mornings, he shrugged. Black coffee, a slice of toast, maybe a banana. I don't have much appetite early. That's when I knew. His hormones weren't gone. They were missing the signal to rise. Testosterone is not built on willpower. It's built on building blocks. Here's what most men don't realize. Testosterone doesn't just appear. It has to be made, every day, from raw materials. And those materials, they come from food, cholesterol, yes, cholesterol, healthy fats, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, quality sleep, and stress balance. Roman had none of that. His diet was low-fat, low cholesterol, low flavor. He hadn't seen the sun before 10 a.m. in years. And his idea of rest? A beer in front of the news. His body wasn't broken. It was simply malnourished for its mission. So we fed the flame. We didn't start with supplements. We started with rituals. Breakfast with protein and fat. 3 eggs, sautéed greens, olive oil. A 15-minute walk before breakfast to expose his eyes to natural light. A glass of water with sea salt on waking to rehydrate and support adrenal rhythm. Nuts and pumpkin seeds as snacks. High in zinc and magnesium and fatty fish. Sardines, salmon, at least twice a week. Nothing extreme. But within 10 days, he reported better sleep, fewer crashes, more morning energy, the kind men don't usually talk about, and most of all, clarity. He said, I don't feel 30, but I feel engaged, like I'm back in my own head. What the science confirms. This isn't just story, it's science. When men after 60 increase omega-3s, cholesterol-rich foods, from clean sources. Zinc via seeds, shellfish, or meat. Sleep quality. Early morning sun exposure. Testosterone begins to climb, naturally. No injections, no patches, no dependency, just supporting what the body already knows how to do. Roman's lesson, he didn't need more motivation, he needed materials, and once his body had those, the fire rekindled. Slowly, gently, powerfully. What about you? What's your breakfast? What's your relationship with fat? Are you avoiding the very foods that build your strength? Because testosterone isn't about force, it's about foundation. Next, we meet Anton. In the next chapter, we meet Anton, 70, whose testosterone was technically normal, but whose drive, joy, and vitality were gone. His breakthrough didn't come from food. It came from fixing one thing most men ignore: sleep. And what happened when he did shocked even his doctor. His testosterone was normal, but he felt like a ghost of himself. Anton was 70 and dignified. Retired engineer. Chess club regular. A man whose shirts were always pressed and whose thoughts were always measured. He didn't complain, didn't mope, didn't believe in excuses. But something had gone missing. He couldn't name it exactly, only that the days felt flatter, the evenings quieter. The space beside his wife felt more like a room than a relationship. He wasn't angry, he wasn't sad, he was numb. His labs came back fine. Testosterone, 400 NDL, right in the mid-range. But numbers don't measure fire, and Anton's fire was out. Until one night, during a family visit, his daughter said gently, "Dad, why do you fall asleep in front of the TV every night and then wander around until 2 a.m.? That moment changed everything. Sleep, the forgotten pillar of testosterone. Most men think testosterone is made in the testicles, and that's technically true. But what triggers it? Sleep. More specifically, deep sleep. The body's most potent testosterone production happens during the first few hours of uninterrupted, slow-wave sleep, especially between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Miss that window? You don't just lose rest, you lose hormones. And Anton had been missing that window for years. Late dinners, bright screens, nodding off during the news, then waking up restless at midnight, scrolling, pacing, snacking. By dawn, he'd been fragmented 6 times. His testosterone wasn't low because of age. It was low because his sleep was fractured. How we rebuilt his nights. We didn't start with melatonin. We started with rhythm, light dinner by 6:30 p.m. No screens after 8 hours, just dim lamps and soft music, magnesium glycinate at 8:30, a warm shower at 9. In bed by 9:30 with a paper book and no phone in reach, room temperature cooled to 66 degrees, and blackout curtains to support melatonin release. The result? Within 10 days, he stopped falling asleep in the chair, began sleeping through the night, woke up clear-headed, and after 3 weeks he noticed something else. He felt playful again, toward his wife, toward life. He said, "It's not that I want more, it's that I finally have the desire again." Sleep isn't just rest, it's repair 1. Poor night can drop testosterone by 10 to about 15%. A week of poor sleep? You can feel it. Sluggish mornings, less motivation, less muscle recovery, lower libido, and emotional flatness. Fixing sleep isn't optional, it's hormonal. Anton's quiet victory. He didn't take a new pill, he didn't chase a number, he simply rebuilt the foundation that his hormones stood upon. And his life? It came back to him, gently, like an old friend returning. What about your sleep? Do you go to bed on purpose, or do you collapse into it? Do you guard your rest like your body depends on it? Because after 60, it does. Next, we meet Vitaly. Vitaly was 66 and convinced his testosterone was gone for good until we did something most men avoid. We got him moving again, but not with workouts, with resistance, not just of the body, but of the mind. And what happened when he began lifting, climbing, pushing again, even with creaky joints, changed everything. Shall we meet him next? He wasn't weak. He just stopped using his power. Vitaly was 66 and solid, a former stonemason, built his first house at 24, could once lift 50-kilo sacks without thinking. His hands were square, his forearms thick, his presence quiet but strong. But the last few years, his muscles softened, his waist thickened, his grip weakened, and worst of all, he avoided mirrors, not out of shame, but because he didn't recognize the man inside them anymore. He wasn't sick, but something deep inside had paused, not died, just gone silent. The first clue wasn't physical, it was emotional. "I get angry quicker," he said, not yelling, not violent, just irritated, at delays, at noise, at his wife, without reason. And then I feel guilty, but the energy is gone to fix it. This is what happens when testosterone dips, not just loss of libido or muscle, but shorter fuse, quieter courage, dimmed emotional resilience. He thought it was just age, but when I asked how often he moved with effort, truly strained, he couldn't remember. "I used to climb stairs carrying bricks," he said. "Now I avoid lifting groceries." There it was, not weakness, avoidance. And testosterone, as it turns out, is a hormone that listens carefully to how you carry yourself, the hormone that rises to challenge. Here's what men don't hear enough. Testosterone responds to resistance, not just any movement, load-bearing, intentional challenge. Lifting, pulling, pushing, sprinting, climbing. You don't need a gym, you don't need weights, you need effort, because when the body is forced to rise, it produces the chemistry of rise. What Vitali did we didn't throw him into burpees or squats. We built tension slowly. Stair climbing 3 flights daily, carrying 2 full water jugs down the garden and back, farmer's walk, push-ups against a wall, then kitchen counter, then floor resistance bands, 5 minutes, twice a day. A kettlebell, 8 claws to lift and lower, not fast, but with control. And within weeks, he slept deeper, smiled more. His shoulders squared when walking, his voice grew more assertive. He wasn't pumped. He was reclaiming posture. And posture, physical and emotional, is testosterone's native language. The physiology of resistance. Every time you apply tension to your muscles, 2 things happen. Luteinizing hormone increases, the signal to make testosterone androgen receptors upregulate, so the body uses what it makes more efficiently. This means even without changing your diet or sleep. Resistance alone begins the hormonal repair, especially in older men. Vitali's revelation. He didn't need a second youth. He needed his first integrity, to carry again, to strain again, to believe that his body and his manhood still mattered. He said, "I don't feel like I'm old anymore. I feel like I'm alive." Ask yourself gently, when was the last time you pushed, not to exhaustion, but to engage? When was the last time your muscles burned just a little? Not from pain, but purpose. Because testosterone is not a luxury. It is your signal that the world still needs your strength. Next, we meet Marco, 73, wasn't losing strength or sleep. He was losing desire, not just for sex, but for purpose. His testosterone returned when he did something most men suppress. He felt again. What was buried was driving his decline, and what surfaced set him free. Would you like to hear Marco's story next? His body was fine, but his fire was out. Marco was 73, retired from law, and still sharp as a blade. He read daily, walked 5 kilometers each morning, ate clean, slept 8 hours. His labs were solid, blood pressure low, weight steady. And yet, he felt flat, not weak, not sick, just colorless. He loved his wife, but hadn't initiated intimacy in months. He volunteered twice a week, but came home empty. He smiled, but rarely laughed. "I'm not depressed," he said. "I just don't care that much anymore." And testosterone measured at 370 Dengjong DL low normal. But for a man like Marco, high-functioning, emotionally restrained, and quietly burning, the number wasn't the problem. The problem was what he had never let himself feel. The unseen drain testosterone is often seen as biology, but in reality, it's also biography. A lifetime of suppressed anger, hidden disappointment, controlled grief, buried conflict. All these can create chronic cortisol exposure, the hormone of stress. And cortisol antagonizes testosterone. The more you carry without release, the less room your body has for power, desire, and drive. Marco had never shouted, never cried in public, never told his wife what truly scared him. And over time, that suppression became his prison. The day he cracked and healed, it happened in a session when we weren't talking about hormones at all. He was telling me about the war, not one he fought in, but one he watched. As a child, in his village, when they fled by night and left everything behind. He hadn't spoken of it in decades, and as he described the fire behind his childhood home, the shaking hands of his mother, the silence of his father, he stopped, then whispered, "I never mourned it." And his shoulders, always upright, always formal, collapsed. He wept, not wildly, not theatrically, but honestly. And from that moment forward, he began returning. Emotions and endocrine health. Most people don't connect feelings to hormones, but science does. When you suppress emotional expression, cortisol stays elevated, heart rate variability drops, sleep is disrupted, inflammation increases, and testosterone stays low. But when you release, parasympathetic tone improves, oxytocin rises, and testosterone follows, because safety, expression, and freedom are fertile ground for vitality. What Marco did next. He began journaling each morning, not about goals, but feelings. He spoke to his wife about his fears, not just his plans. He resumed piano, not to perform, but to express. He allowed himself to grieve, miss, laugh, and even rage. And once a month, he walked a trail near a lake where no one could hear him shout. He didn't become emotional. He became whole. And his testosterone? 6 months later, 492 NGDL, still not sky high, but his smile unmistakably returned. The quiet truth, your testosterone does not just depend on what you eat or lift. It depends on what you hide and what you've been taught not to feel, maybe the very weight suppressing your strength. What about you? What haven't you said? What pain have you filed away? What memory still lives in your body, waiting to be mourned, shouted, laughed, or simply heard? Because testosterone rises not just from effort, but from release. Next, we complete the journey. In our final chapter, we return to Leonid, the man who began this path. You'll hear what changed, what returned, and what he discovered about being a man after 60. Not through dominance, youth, or muscle, but through dignity, rhythm, and truth. Shall we walk with him once more? He didn't want to be young again. He wanted to feel real again. When we first met Leonid, he didn't complain. He just sat quietly, felt slower, less urgent, a little further from his body each day. He didn't ask for much, not bigger muscles, not wild nights. Just this. I want to wake up and know what I want. That was 6 months ago. Now, he wakes before his alarm. He makes breakfast with intention. He stretches, hydrates, shaves with care. And when his wife touches his arm, he leans into her, not out of obligation, but invitation. What changed? Not a single miracle, but many small human truths. Honored, one by one, he restored his hormones by reclaiming his life. He ate fat again, 3 eggs, olive oil, sardines, avocado. No fear of cholesterol, because he finally understood it was a building block, not a villain. He slept on purpose. Phone away by 8 p.m., magnesium and warm tea. Asleep by 10, rising with sunlight, and with it, testosterone. He moved with weight again. Slow carries, squats to a chair, daily walks in the park. Not workouts, but rituals of strength. He drank more water than he ever had. Liters a day, mostly before 6 p.m. His joints thanked him. His kidneys eased. His skin even softened. He reconnected with his wife, with friends, with himself. And perhaps most unexpectedly, he allowed himself to feel the frustration of aging, the sadness of slowing, the longing to still matter. The final lab result. At his 6-month checkup, total testosterone, 553 NGDL, more than a number. It was a signal. His body heard him, responded to him, rewarded him, because biology isn't separate from being, and testosterone, at its core, isn't about aggression. It's about aliveness. What Leonid said that I'll never forget. He looked at me and said, "I thought I wanted more testosterone, but what I really wanted was to feel like a man who still has something to give." That was it. No hormone replaces that. But when you honor your food, your sleep, your movement, your emotions, and your relationships, testosterone follows. Because life follows. The journey you've just taken, you've now walked beside. Roman, who fed his flame with real food. Anton, who slept his way back to clarity vitale, who lifted himself from passivity. Marco, who unshackled buried grief. And Leonid, who wove it all together. Each showed that testosterone doesn't live in injections or pills alone. It lives in courage to question, discipline, to rebuild tenderness, to feel structure, to support and connection, to remind us we still matter. And now, to you. If you've made it to this final chapter, you're not looking for shortcuts. You're looking for truth. And the truth is this: testosterone can return. So can strength. So can intimacy. So can you. Not through force, but through rhythm, intention, love, and care. If this journey touched you, I ask you gently, like this video, share it with a man who may be quietly struggling, and subscribe for more stories that respect your age, your heart, and your path. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are, as always, stronger with time. With warmth, Doctor.